9 a.m. by my clock, so whenever you're ready, I think we're good.
Okay, the meeting of the Licensing Advisory Committee is called to order. I need to read an initial statement to get started. Due to Governor Greg Abbott's March 13th, 2020 proclamation of a state disaster affecting all counties in Texas due to the coronavirus, COVID-19, which was extended on July 2nd, 2020, as well as the governor's March 16th, 2020 suspension of certain provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act. The Texas Forensic Science Commission Licensing Advisory Committee meets virtually today as authorized under Texas Government Code Section 551.125. Okay, having said that, we also need to go ahead and, since we're meeting remotely, call roll to get the meeting started, make sure we've established a quorum. So when, I can't actually see most of you on the screen, but when I call your name, just go ahead and affirm that you're here. Robert Sailors. You're muted, Robert.
There he goes. Oh wait, it remuted.
There.
Here, there we go. Too many windows open.
All right. Aaron Reed.
Here.
Elise Watts.
Here.
Christina Vacan.
Here.
Bill Hines.
I'm here.
Callie Bailey.
Callie's on maternity leave. She had a baby.
Okay. Emily Esquivel.
I'm here. Sorry you can't see me.
No worries. And Donna Udaley.
I'm here.
How bad did I miss your name?
You didn't miss it at all. You said it perfect.
Awesome. All right. So the next item then, Lee, do you want to read the instructions for public participation?
Just for everyone that wants to participate, as a member of the public, you'll type in the chat feature of the software. Just type your question anytime during the meeting and we can unmute your microphone for you at that point. And if you don't get an opportunity to talk at the end of the meeting, we'll have a public comment section where we unmute everyone so that everyone has an opportunity to say what they wish. And we also have on the line, Steve Miller is here for any technical issues. So if anyone has any technical problems during the meeting, just shoot Steve Miller a chat and he'll get you squared away. That's it.
Fantastic. So the next item we have is the review and adoption of minutes from our last meeting way back in January. Is there any comment or concerns about those minutes? Can we get a motion to adopt those minutes?
Motion to adopt.
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we've adopted the minutes and it is time for our administrative update.
Lynn, you want to give that or you want me to?
I think you can go ahead, Lee. On the first part, and then I'll chime in on the second part.
Yeah, Rodney, you're on the line, right? Can you give us the licensee update?
Yes, good morning. How's everybody doing? Numbers we took was as of July the 9th. The total licensees that we have as of that date is 1,339. So the number is growing. Broken down between regular, provisional, tech reviewers, and temporary are as follows. We have 915 regular, 7 provisional, 413 blanket, 2 technical reviewer licenses, and also 2 temporary licenses. One noteworthy comment that I think that everybody should be aware of is between now and the end of this year, we're probably looking at between 1,080, almost 1,100 licensees that will be set to expire and are eligible to renew. So it's going to be a really busy time for everybody. So I just want to kind of point that out to everybody so you'll be aware. Does anybody have any questions about the numbers that we were presenting?
Thank you,
Cool.
Thank you, Rodney.
You got it anytime.
So we do have, the second piece of this is that we received some applications through the TACLID for folks to replace Greg and Robert's seats. And I just wanted to pause for a moment and say how grateful we are as staff of the commission for Robert and Greg's service. I mean, they've been with us since the beginning, and that it was a big undertaking to get this program up and going, and hard to overstate our appreciation for both of these gentlemen who guided Lee and me through some things that we wouldn't have been able to get through if we didn't have their subject matter expertise, and also just their general understanding for the way things really work in a laboratory systems, or in a, you know, whether it be county, municipal, or state big system. So we are very sad to see you guys go, and eternally grateful for everything you've done in service to the profession through this program. So I just wanted to say that a heartfelt thank you to both of you. So
Good work, gentlemen.
and also to say that we'll still be bugging you, as I'm sure you probably as you know. Just ask James Miller, because we still bug you about things. We do have some really good quality nominations, and the commission's going to be considering that tomorrow. I don't know where they will end up in terms of who is chosen. I think the main thing they try to do is balance disciplines, experience, and the type of lab that the individual is coming from. So, you know, we try to have small labs, larger size labs, public and private, and we try to cover all the different disciplines to the extent we can. I mean, we're really fortunate right now because we finally have firearms and trace. Well, actually, we had Mike Ward from Fort Worth PD, so firearms was covered. But having someone from Trace has been super helpful. So we're going to try to continue that representation just for all the disciplines. So anyway, that's where we're at. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to say about that, Lee?
Nope, I think that covers it. We have 8 applications, so we don't have a full list of 20 names, but we think 8's pretty good.
I don't know where we came. 20, I think, was for the initial list.
Yeah.
But the idea that 20 people are going to volunteer for this every time, I think, is probably a little unrealistic.
Hey, we tried to get 20.
Yeah.
We really did.
I mean, 20 is a lot. I think 8 is great.
Yeah.
And so, and I know that you, Elise, and Peter worked really hard to arm twist folks into submitting their applications. So we're grateful for that. So we'll see how it goes tomorrow.
Sounds good. And I'll take liberty just real quickly to say thank you for the experience, and Lynn and Lee, y'all been great to work with, and we certainly wouldn't be where we are today without all of y'all's work as well, and legal expertise, and just the whole everybody on the committee I've had the opportunity to work with has been great. Very intelligent, thoughtful group of people, and I feel like we've really accomplished something. So thank you to everybody.
Just second what Greg said, and know that the committee's in good hands still.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, brother, moving on, I guess quickly then before we bog down there. Do we have any outstanding statistics course
No, but we
requests?
have updates in this area for sure. So Dr. Spiegelman passed away. And we had to figure out pretty quickly how to address the individuals who were in his course. And there were people, probably about a half a dozen folks, between 4 and 6, depending on how you count it, that were somewhere in the process of either signing up, having recently signed up, or all the way to I'm about to take the exam and when he passed. And so what we did is we sort of scrambled pretty quickly to get people an alternative for those who had just started, because it didn't seem fair to go, put them through the whole course and have no faculty. Like Cliff was doing everything by himself. He did the review session before the test. He did answered questions. He didn't have a TA assigned. So what we ended up doing was offering people 2 options. They could continue and finish Cliff's course, and Michael Longnecker, who actually wrote the book for the course and is a faculty member in the stats department at A&M, he graded the exams of those who just wanted to finish and be done with it. And we had 1 person who decided to take that route. The others actually switched to a course offered by Sam Houston State for the 2nd summer session from July 1 to July 31. So it's like an intensive stats course with Dr. Busini. So they are in the throes of that, like, as we sit here. So better them than me is all I have to say. But I think they're all going to make it through and get their stats. For those who were sort of midstream with Dr. Spiegelman, we also put out a general call to the TACLID, like, if you want to join into this course, just let us know and we'll add you in. Some people took advantage of that, particularly from the Austin PD lab. And then there's a course that, as you know, we approved from NMS. That's actually not NMS itself, but the nonprofit that's associated with NMS. And Barry Logan talked about that at the TACLID meeting yesterday, and it sounds like the first course they ran was actually an in-person course that in the end turned to virtual because of COVID, but in the beginning had started as in-person. But what they're going to be doing for the fall session that they'll run is actually a virtual option. So once we have that information, that would be another option for folks. And then the final thing that I just talked to the faculty from CSAFE. Are you all familiar with CSAFE? So it's the Center for Statistics and Applied Forensic Science. It's a consortium of universities. Iowa State's in there, UC Irvine, Carnegie Mellon, University of West Virginia. There's a bunch of them. And they have all this funding from NIST and from the federal government to do all sorts of projects regarding statistics and forensics. And so they sent me a syllabus of a course that they're proposing to run starting October 1st that would be virtual, and they would have a TA assigned to the Texas crew, and that TA would hold office hours and all that. And it looks like a really good course, and it's going to be taught by, Karen Kafadar and Hal Stearns and Alicia Caricuri and Robin Mejia from Carnegie Mellon. So they're going to split it up. So that'll be a good option too. So what I will do, I only just got the syllabus yesterday, so I'll circulate it to the group so you can take a look at it and comment on it. But I think that'll be another option for people. And then of course, whatever stats courses people want us to approve in addition to that. So Do we have any others, Lee, besides that, or those are the only ones?
No, that's it. We are still waiting on the link for the NMS course, so we can share that on the website as well. I don't know if Elise has an update on that.
I don't have an update, but I will get one.
Okay.
I think Barry had said yesterday at TACLID that it's the way it sounded to me, correct me if I'm wrong, Elise, but it sounded like since they started it as an in-person and now they're transitioning to the virtual one, that takes a little bit of effort. So I gather that they'll have the link as soon as they can, right? I mean.
Right. And COVID has thrown everybody into a tizzy. So yeah, we're working on it, but we don't have it finished at this time.
Okay. All right. So that's what I had on the stats.
So just to clarify on that, it sounds like there's so much out there now that's being made available by entities that there's no real reason for the Forensic Science Commission to try to recreate another stats course like we had done, like had been done previously.
So I think between the NMS offering and the CSAFE offering, that'll be it. I mean, if CSAFE does it and they're able to run that, and NMS has their course and they're able to run that periodically, I think that, especially because now NMS is see, before my concern was, well, it'd be great to link to NMS, but I don't know how many people are going to be able to physically make that an option, a viable option. But now that they're transitioning, I think between those two courses, to me, those are really great options for people who want to not just do any old statistics, but an actual statistics course that's applicable to the professional work they do day in and day out. I will tell you that I sent Cliff's course to CSAFE, and they said this is the driest, most boring thing I have ever seen. And they love, I mean, they adore Cliff. They were colleagues with him for years. And so they were like, our entire job, we see our entire job is to liven this up so that people will really be engaged and want to take it. And I imagine this is a similar thing happening with the NMS course in terms of trying to offer lots of practical examples and so on. So anyway,
I
agree. I just wanted to clarify that to make sure that.
I think that making people want to take it is a little bit of a stretch, Lynn, but livening up, I can see.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to do that, right? But yeah.
Make people not want to take it less, I guess.
Right. And then Busini's course is sort of this condensed thing, but my understanding is that he uses a lot of practical examples. But you know, his expertise is trace primarily, so you know that it's sort of interesting. But yeah, it'll be good to hear the feedback from the Sam Houston course, because we've got about a dozen forensic scientists enrolled in that thing right now. So that's a good number to get feedback from, I think. All right, stats is done.
So do we have any more outstanding CFE requests, or, and I know we do need to discuss the approval process.
Yeah, we don't have any outstanding CFE requests, but we do have the edit to our guidelines for CFE. We've been getting a lot of inquiries related to software and instrument training, which we didn't reference here previously. So we thought we might provide a little bit more specific guidance as to what counts and what doesn't. And so if you all will look at the language there and let me know if you're okay with the way this is worded, whether or not you think it's helpful. Because I think we're going to be getting a lot of these. What did Rodney say? We have 1,080 applicants, and several of them that have renewed already have multiple software instrument trainings that they're asking for credit for. So we'd be reviewing a lot of these if we don't provide a little bit more guidance here. Is everyone okay with the language? Should I read it?
why don't you, just to make it,
Yeah. All right. Software and instrument training in the regular course of an analyst's work, unless the activity is part of a more extensive training to build expertise beyond baseline knowledge of the software or instrument operation. And then we give the example of training on how to do DNA mixture interpretation using StarMix software.
So, can I ask a question about that? I mean, that learning how to use StarMix is a regular part of a DNA analyst's job now.
so yeah, that's in the section of things that won't be approved, Lynn.
Yes,
So
right.
that would,
But the modifier, so it says unless the activity is part of more extensive training to build expertise beyond baseline knowledge of the software instrument operation, e.g., that modifier is misplaced.
Yeah, I can see that it would be read that way.
Maybe it should go up after the first comma.
Okay, I'll move it there. That'll be better.
that makes sense.
So do we have an example that we could put after what's building expertise beyond baseline knowledge of the software instrument operation?
Yeah, that would be helpful if we can do that.
I have a question. So I'll give you a scenario that we did in-house. So we had Agilent, who does manufacturer of all of our seized drug instruments, come in and do a week-long training with our scientists. Is that something that would count?
So what were they doing?
I guess it depends.
They were going over method development and like for parameters on instruments, and I guess troubleshooting the instrument as well.
Did they learn anything new, like to build their expertise on how to use the instrument, or was it just a regular refresher?
No, I would say what they were learning new is to optimize the instruments that we have in-house.
What do you guys think? These are hard.
So is
To
learning,
me-
I mean, is optimization of an instrument something that they should be able to do as part of their regular job, or is it above and beyond?
It would seem to be above and beyond from my perspective, because a forensic scientist at the baseline knows how to run their samples, analyze the data, but they may not be able to know how to go and change parameters and actually optimize things as part of like a new validation or method development.
Well, would it depend on if the instrumentation is new, or if it's something that's been in-house and been utilized for a long period of time? If somebody's bringing on something new, I could definitely see that as applicable, because that's going to be a completely new set of hardware that somebody's never used. But if it's the same thing, I don't know. I think it'd be dependent.
So why is software and instrument training not considered CE?
So some of the training we saw that requested was sort of things like, well, I learned how to use genetic analyzer software. Well, any DNA analyst has to know how to use that software. So that's not continuing education, that's basic training.
Right,
That-
but I guess
that sort of thing is what we're trying to exclude. It's like, this is the training that's, you're gonna have to function at your job. It's not continuing. What we want to reward is, okay, you're learning more to go beyond what you'd have to do just to
right.
do to meet the
So
minimum.
can it be, because we were struggling with the same thing, trying to develop CE rules in-house, right? And it was like, if it's part of your normal training to be authorized to do something, then it didn't count. But if it's training beyond being authorized to use an instrument or to do a certain process or procedure, then that would. So maybe it's training that you're getting to learn how to, like, we're going to talk about bringing 3D technology into firearms, but we don't have that instrument yet. So we're learning about the technology. So I would think that training would count, right? So how do you, I know we're trying to draw a line, but how do we phrase that to draw the line without restricting people from expanding to new technologies and learning about that and giving them credit for that?
Maybe we should qualify it and say that, like training on instrumentation software that's performed by the vendor, it's something new that the laboratory is looking to bring on. So for instance, like StarMix, that company came out and gave a week-long course on it at Bexar County, underlying principles, theory, a lot more nuts and bolts instead of just how to push the button. To me, that seemed pretty extensive versus just how to, start an instrument. So, I mean, maybe we can delineate it to where it's something's provided by the vendor. That's something the laboratory doesn't already have in operation. And then, things that you're taught in-house, once something's already in place procedurally, that is just part of your regular training. That was kind of rambling. I don't know if that made sense or not.
Yeah, well, what y'all are both saying is kind of where we were trying to go. Maybe we just didn't word it as well as we should have. So I'd ask that if we have some wording to clarify that.
Yeah, so do y'all language? That would make it super helpful if we just drew the line at training provided by the vendor.
I think that's maybe a little too generous, because sometimes some places do have the vendor come in and just do the basic training. So I'm not so sure I'd go all the way to vendor as a bright line.
What about
maybe
new instrumentation or something new?
Or yeah, exactly, like something that is beyond the typical training to.
I mean, can we just say like a new analytical method, something like that? I mean, it has to be substantive.
You're training in a new analytical method or advanced training in a current method, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
I guess so the one thing that I'm just sort of thinking about what the Bruce Bedolis and the Sarah Kerrigans would say if they read this, and especially Bruce. And I think the concern would be that we're not asking for a ton of CE to begin with. And the purpose of CE is supposed to be encouraging people to read scientific publications, to learn more than what they have to do at their job. So while I understand, Robert, totally that the StarMix training is intensive and it's a full week and you're learning a lot of substantive things, I'm just not sure that you have to do that, or you can't be a DNA analyst if your lab's bringing on StarMix. So to me, some sort of specialized training that Buckleton provides later about, how, let's say about interrelated searches, or, like when you have a family or something really tricky and something that the lab doesn't see every day. I don't know. What I don't want to do is have us give so many options that nobody has to do anything beyond their job.
Yeah.
And they don't have to read anymore. They don't have to read journal articles. They don't have to go, attend any conferences, because we've given them so many ways to get CE that there's no stretch at all.
Lynn, when I think about it in the legal context, like the state bar does not give credit for you to learn how to use Lexis, for example. And in that scenario, you'd be making your job more efficient, better for your client, but it doesn't give you credit for continuing education. You're just learning a new skill. So I don't know.
Right. I mean, you don't get credit for when Westlaw brings on a new way to do legal research. So what, I mean, you get credit for some pretty lame conferences, that's true, but you don't, it's, it just makes me, I'm just thinking like.
So
even though-
I think that like Robert's example of the Star Mix stuff, though, if you think back to when labs were first considering bringing it on and they had someone come in and teach them all about it, that like now, yeah, if you've already got it in house, that shouldn't count. But now, so like, and that goes back to my example of we're talking about 3D stuff. We're exploring all the different vendors, trying to figure out what's the best technology for us. So is that where we want to draw the line, is exploring new processes, new procedures, new instrumentation to learn how to validate it versus something that's already in-house and you're just learning how to use it now. I don't know if that's where you want to draw the line, or you're just like, no, let's not give any credit for any software instrumentation at all.
Yeah, what would be the
So,
impact if we did do that? If we did just say you don't get credit for software and instrument training, would that put a strain on your employees or the lab? Or would it
I
not?
mean, not on us. No,
So-
but
Going to the Star Mix, though, question, yes, you need it to do your job, but what we've seen in forensics going back years is a new technology would come on and people were really slow to embrace it. So you have labs doing mixture interpretation the way that was done in the 90s still in the teens. You have, so by recognizing, hey, you're going out and learning something new to your lab and giving credit for that, I think that's important. But the line is, now that Star Mix is implemented in the lab, yeah, that's not continuing education, that's training when somebody new comes in and gets that, or somebody from another lab comes in and gets that. But when you're first adding a new technology or a new technique, that's the very definition of continuing education. You're learning something new, so you're not stuck in whatever era it was that you got your initial training. You're actually staying current in what's happening in your field.
I defer to you all about how to do it. I'm just channeling my inner Bruce Badoli and my inner Sarah Kerrigan and saying like, okay, we just need to make sure that we don't afford so many opportunities to folks that they don't have to do anything beyond show up at work every day and do their jobs to get their continuing education. Like, I want people reading journal articles, because the gap between what's out there and published and what's understood at the bench, over and over again, we just keep seeing that gap present itself in so many different disciplines. And that, that's something that is always present in my mind. Having just watched 2 days of an expert hearing on DNA evidence for a death case involving some portion of analysis that was done at the Austin PD lab, and just thinking about that massive gap between the work that was being done and what the experts understood about the work about the underlying principles. I mean, somehow we've got to start bringing that together. And one of the ways to do that is through a robust CE program. And so I just need to say and I'm going to stop talking now and let you all decide what you want to do. But that's just seeing it on the back end, seeing it play itself out in real cases and real meltdowns, for lack of a better way to say it. It'd be real good to try to get people on the front end to where we don't have that massive gap. I hope that makes sense, what I'm saying.
It does. And one thing I was just going to say is I agree with you in part, Lynn. But one way that we might look at this is that instead of like just having the ability to earn CEUs, why don't we have a specific set? If the idea is that you have to read journal articles, then you could have a specific set that have to be done through that mechanism, that you have to document that you've read however many articles in this period of time. That just could be a carve out to mandate that, okay, you can't just come in and do your job. You have to continue to read.
And I think, it's one thing to be trained on how to use the software or the instrument in just a very general sense, and like what you guys were talking about with StarMix, where it was like you're going back and learning the basic principles and stuff, because you have to be able to understand that to be able to then communicate to the jury so that they understand and so that you understand what your interpretation is actually like meaning, right? So I think that's important too, to, if you are going to implement a new technology, to have that training and have it extensive to be able to understand those things. And a lab is not going to be bringing on a new technology in a section every single year or every 2 years or every 4 years even. So it's not, I don't think that you're going to run into this, oh, well, every year everybody just did, a new training on a new software, and so they're not reading any journal. I mean, this is going to be once every 5 years, maybe, that a certain section brings on something new.
Okay, I think as long as you all feel like there's a way to delineate, then I think, I think that makes sense to me. And you're a lot closer to it than I am. So I defer to y'all. I do think it would be helpful for us to have as specific as language on what we are thinking as possible, so that people can look at it and say, oh yeah, this may be that, and or maybe not. So if we could, so do we want to talk about something to the effect of, to build expertise beyond baseline knowledge of the software or instrument operation, e.g., training on a novel or new technique or analytical method?
I think that works.
And again, I would specify also, provided by the vendor.
Provided by the vendor.
Does it have to be the vendor, or could it be somebody who is an expert in it already?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be concerned about limiting to the vendor, because the vendor's got a sales alternative motive as well. So I'm always actually a little bit skeptical of training from vendors, because how many times, who all's been to a vendor training that turned into a sales pitch pretty quickly? So,
what about if it provided, now tell me if I'm stretching this, provided by a subject matter expert external to the laboratory? Or can it?
I like that, actually.
Yeah, I don't think it should be in-house.
Yeah,
That's kind of what I guess that's kind of where I was going with it, because I could see the argument then coming, well, then basically, again, it was just part of your regular in-house training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that when you,
I think not in-house is a good way of doing that.
and I also think that when you state that new and novel, it's new and novel to the laboratory. It may not be new and novel to the community.
Unity.
Yeah,
that's
right.
good. Yeah. Lee, are you catching all that?
I can go ahead and read it off for you guys on how I might word it, and then Greg and I can work offline to clean it up. But we could say software and instrument training in the regular course of an analyst's work, and then you can say, like, for example, the DNA mixture interpretation example that we give here. Unless the activity is part of a more extensive training to build expertise beyond the baseline knowledge. For example, training on a novel or new technique or an analytical method provided by a SME or someone external to the lab.
A SME who is external to the lab, I would say.
Yeah.
All right. Does that sound good, guys?
Yeah, I think that captures it. We can clean up the language. I don't think Greg can, because I think he's like, see you later after today. I'm just kidding. But we'll clean it up. I think that's it, right?
I'd be happy to help for the next month and 7 days, I think is what I've got on the,
Till August 3rd.
what I'm officially sailing off. So if you want me to help, I can. If you don't, that's good too. Either way.
I think it's cool. I think that we have the essence of it. Is that everybody feel comfortable with that? Okay.
All right, can we get a motion and vote on that to change the language there?
Do we have a motion?
You don't have to recite the language, just say make the motion, what Lee said.
I'll make the motion to redo the language for part C there to something along the lines of what Lee said.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so that motion carries.
All right. On 7, we don't really have anything, Greg, but thank you to everybody who's helped me work on those on a case-by-case basis. We've been doing it that way in order to expedite the applications. We don't want people waiting meeting to meeting to get approval on whether their course counts. So thank you to all of those that have been helping me on that. We don't have any to review today if we want to move on to the next item.
Absolutely. So I know we have some rules to look at. So what do we have as far as outstanding licensing rules
Sure.
and proposals for approval?
If you all recall, under our current rules, when you add a forensic discipline to your license, so if you have 2 disciplines, for example, you have to get an additional 8 hours of discipline-specific CFE in the area in which you add. But we don't have a timeline that sets out. So if someone, say someone added one the day before their license expired, they would have to get 8 hours. So here we're just setting up a timeline that considers the fact that they added it at a later date. And so if they add it within 6 months of their current license expiration, there's no CFE required under this new rule. If they add it between 6 and 18 months of their license expiration, 4 hours will be required. So half the amount of the regular requirement. And then anything beyond that, they have to get the full 8 hours of CFE. Does anybody have any questions about the rule?
No, but I'll just say I think that's really good because we just had that issue with an analyst adding trace to their license, but that expires in like a couple of months. So I think this is a really well thought out rule and I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's just something we didn't consider before, so.
Any other comments? Then can we get a motion to approve that rule?
I move we approve that rule.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Going on to 9, do we have any updates on exam evaluations and
Lee,
videos?
to add here, but I think we need to pick back up on this. And where we left off was we had piloted 10 questions that we need to launch into a new version of the exam. So we can work on that. And I think we were missing questions in certain categories that we wanted to pilot for the next 10. And so we need to get a group together to work on those. And so we can talk about that offline. Linda,
Yeah.
anything else to?
We have a contract with the psychometricians that is extended. It's a 4-year long contract, so they'll be able to review the questions. This is just one of those things that we need to put a lot of emphasis on for the time between tomorrow's commission meeting and our October meeting. Because I would like to get that process rolling again so we can build our test bank. So we do have some people who volunteered to help with questions. Some of those were sort of torn apart by the psychometricians, so we can't use them. Others I think will survive. It's a tricky process because we can write some really nice questions, but if the psychometrician looks at it and says that it's not constructed in a way that they believe is comports with all those principles of test administration, then we have to start over. If we could just write the questions, we'd have about 1,000 questions by now, but that process is quite tedious. But we do
Is there-
have to pick it back up again, and we also need to re-record the exam training videos. Now, one of the things that we've been working like day and night and weekends on was getting the legal and mandatory, the mandatory legal and professional responsibility training done. So right now that is being worked over in final form at Sam Houston because they're taking it and actually the course design people are working through it to make it a real professional presentation. It's not just like Robert and I yammering over a boring old PowerPoint with some bullets on it. Like it's an actual CE type course. So doing the recording for that, now that we're done with that, we can move on to re-recording the trainings that people have to watch to take the exam. So those are two things that are high priority for us in the next 3 months. So just keep your eyes out for email requests for help on that.
Yeah, the two videos that need to be redone critically are the root cause. I'm sorry, not root cause, but evidence handling. Yeah, and root cause analysis. And I think we had volunteers for those, but we can start over from scratch. And if anyone's interested in helping out on those topics, let us know.
I think Aaron and Greg were going to do them. So we just need to get snowflakes to them. A snowflake is this.
Nice.
And
Okay.
it's a nice little job. It's old school looking microphone thing. And you talk into it and it does a nice job of picking up sound and of minimizing background noise. So like right now there is an absurd amount of construction outside my window because they're digging, they're doing this massive project by the Capitol, but nobody can really hear it because I'm got my snowflake and it's drowning out all the background noise. So what the course design people said is that as long as you don't have like screaming toddlers or dogs barking, it can drown pretty much anything else out. And I can empathize with that because I have both of those things at home and neither of them can be drowned out by any technology. It's not possible. So, so anyway, we'll get you guys the snowflakes now that Robert and I are done with them, and then we can talk about getting those re-recorded. Okay.
Lynn, I have a question for you on the test questions.
Yes.
You said the psychometricians have the principles that they review by. Is there like a short summary sheet or something that you could distribute to the question panel so that they could have that in mind as they create the questions going forward?
Yes, we have guidelines and we have a PowerPoint that she did, and what we could do is have her do PowerPoint again.
Okay.
On a Zoom or something, and she talks about like the way the question stem needs to be phrased, the way the answers, like you can't do you know, any of these things that are like A, B, C, or all of the above. Like none of that is permitted. None of the ways that you can get around having to provide like each stem, I mean, each potential answer choice has to be equally, how shall I say it? They can't be close enough to each other so that someone would mistake a wrong answer for a right answer. It's just, and then they evaluate how those questions perform, and they tell you like, this one's a dud. You can't use that one. These three you can. You know, it's quite an extensive.
Yeah, I know there's a lot to it. I was just wondering if there was some kind of the PowerPoint was good, but I was wondering if there was some kind of cheat sheet thing they could have in front of them as they're writing them to kind of.
Yeah, and it is extremely frustrating, cheat sheet, because it basically says you can't do anything.
Gotcha.
And so you spend like one question that you would think would be like, oh, this will be easy. I can bang 5 out in, 10 minutes, no problem. And then you get to looking at the psychometrician's parameters and you're like, that's, I mean, Aaron did some of that with us, so I think you probably did too, Greg, didn't you?
I did, yes. Writing questions is something I will not miss, so.
Yeah, I think all mine were rejected.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have anything else on those topics or?
Not right now, but stay tuned for sure.
Okay, do we have any updates on the voluntary licensure? I know earlier in the year, we had talked quite a bit about, or I guess in 2019, but we had talked quite a bit about.
So crime scene, that group is going to be meeting to go over parameters for voluntary license for crime scene reconstructionists in August. But I don't know the exact date for that yet, but when I do, I'll let you know. It's really hard to coordinate all their schedules right now. Because we have a couple rangers, we have Judge Harvey participating. It's a lot of schedule coordination. One thing that has come up, very interesting thing has come up in the context of that conversation, and it's about providing guidance on DNA analysis, limitations in particular for crime scene reconstructionists. Because one of the things we've seen, because, you know, crime scene is typically not done in an accredited laboratory, and none of the folks are licensed currently because we don't have a program. So what we've seen, at least one example of, is a report that has very, very fundamental misunderstandings about DNA analysis, in particular mixture analysis. So let's say you have a covering of a pillow, like a pillowcase, and that goes in, you know, they cut it, it's a blood stain, send it on to DNA, it comes back, say, you know, a blood stain, mixture of at least 3 contributors. And then what we're seeing is the crime scene analysts, reconstructionists saying that 3 people must have bled. That there was a bloodletting event involving 3 people, and those 3 individuals are 3 individuals for whom a likelihood ratio, when they did the comparison, there was an LR generated of all varying, you know, from 1,000 up into the quadrillions. And they're saying, you know, there was a bloodletting event involving anytime an LR is generated when the comparison is made against the known, they're deducing that because a statistic was generated, that 3 people, those 3 contributors or potential contributors must have bled. So do you see how problematic that is? Like,
very, yes.
Serious misunderstanding of what that likelihood ratio means, of what, you know, of what it means when we talk about how DNA is deposited. You can have a blood stain, but it doesn't mean that the 3 people deposited blood. Basic stuff, basic stuff. So that's going to be a part of what we're talking about. But I just, you know, just to make you aware of that.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
It's not awesome that they're saying that. It's awesome that it's being addressed, to clarify.
And the example we got was a report issued from DPS.
Okay.
So
I'm not going to say anything about that.
Person, not a ranger or anything. I'm talking about the DNA report.
Okay.
And then an independent crime scene reconstruction person got the DNA report and then wrote the you know, and then did the scene reconstruction, incorporating the DNA report. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? So scene reconstructionist does the bloodstain patterns and all that, uses the DPS report to make deductive sort of conclusions about what must have happened at that scene, based on a misunderstanding of that DNA report.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely needs to be addressed. So I'm glad y'all are looking at that. Is there anything going on with the digital evidence or any of the other disciplines that we?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. I mean, we do have an applicant who's a latent print person.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see what the commission thinks about that, but I think
Sure.
latent digital would be next for sure.
Okay.
One other thing on this is we need to work on, we just haven't had the time, launching the exam for the unaccredited forensic disciplines that we approved a couple meetings ago. We just haven't been able to do that because it takes some time. So I'll be working on that in between now and October.
Sounds like y'all have enough to do between that and all the renewals coming in.
Yeah.
Did we talk about a fee for taking the exam for the unaccredited disciplines?
Yeah, I believe the fee is $50.
Okay.
We just published a rule that addressed that.
Oh.
In order to build all that in to our process, it just takes time working with the software. Time that we
We
have.
also have to add, like, when you add a new fee,
Yeah.
sometimes so it's all very tightly controlled by the state, of course, because folks are entering their credit card information, you know, and that money goes into the comptrollers, into the central system of receiving money, and then has to be directed. So that whole process is quite tightly controlled. So anytime you add a new fee, there's some things that need to be done to test it out.
The other piece is that the rule we have that built in the fee hasn't been published yet. And so we can't charge someone a fee that we don't have a rule written about. So we're waiting on that timeline as well. And that should just be in the next month or so.
Okay.
Questions?
Yeah, time has to pass whenever we adopt a new rule before it becomes effective. So that's perfect.
Any other comments on this topic? Something for everybody who's staying on to look forward to in the next couple of meetings? So I don't think we have anything on waiver applications or criminal history reviews. Is that right?
Nothing.
Bill Hines was a question that we had, so thank you, Bill, for that. But it ended up being what we thought it was going to be, so we're good.
Very good. And then same thing, nothing on technical reviewer licenses.
Yep, nothing there.
Anything on, I don't think we have anything on temporary license.
Nope.
No fourth exam requests. We're moving quick through the agenda now. So what do we have on the updates for the legal and professional responsibility training?
It's
I've
basically,
heard that those are.
it's in Sam Houston's court right now, so they're putting the finishing touches from what I understand. They had to take an introduction by Peter Stout, and then the first half is Robert Smith's content, second half my content. There's quiz questions dispersed throughout and a video. So we should be able to have that out for people soon, and it's, you know, a couple hours and they go online and take it and then they're done. But it should be available as soon as we have it. We're going to send it out to the tech list so people can start taking it. But people's license renewals are being processed in the interim anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
There won't be any delay.
But the anticipation is it will be, for the bulk of the people getting renewed, it's going to be available in time for them to take it.
Yes.
Okay.
Should be.
How long
I mean,
is the video, Lynn?
what?
How long is the video? Is it 2 hours or 3?
So it sort of depends on the production part of it, but I think it'll be somewhere between 2 and 3 hours. I think Robert and I each had about 50 slides, 45, 50 slides. So it's going to be 2 to 3 hours.
Okay,
They're all of them are forensic science specific examples, every single thing. And it was a ton of work to gather all that, because some of them are in state, some of them are out of state. They're court, case law citations. I mean, it's so comprehensive that Robert and I were talking about it, and we really think we should send it to like TDCAA and TCDLA for them to look at too, because we think it would add value to everybody in the system. So yeah, I mean,
awesome.
I will check in again today with Sam about where they stand on it, but it should be ready. I think they had said within 10 days the last time I talked to them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
They've done one half. They're about 2/3 of the way through, and then they had to add Peter's introductory remarks.
Very good.
Cool.
Okay, anything else on that front? Sorry. Okay, if not, then what do we have on OSAC registry standards?
So Peter Stout is sort of coordinating that process, and he got feedback on one talk standard so far, with it like an official recommendation to the commission about what to do with that. But we just got that in after we had already posted the agenda. And so we're gonna have to deal with OSAC stuff more at the next commission meeting. But this is, what did Peter send me? It's basically like a recommendation that says we're good with it. Let me see if I can find it.
I just forwarded it to you.
They have not done the validation talk standard. Okay, so it says here, okay, he says here, a group of toxicologists, including Brittany Casey, Megan Barton, Brad Hall, Sarah Dempsey, Renee Hawkins, and Peter Stout, evaluated ANSI ASB Best Practice Recommendation 037 Guidelines for Opinions and Testimony in Forensic Toxicology, First Edition, 2019, and ANSI ASB Standard 017 Standard Practices for Measurement, Traceability, and Forensic Toxicology, First Edition, 2018. And so on the first one, they say, this is a reasonable recommendation that many labs will be able to comply with. However, when TFSC adopts this document, it should be made clear the document is a recommendation, and it should be clear the referenced SWIG Talks document that details education and experience is also a recommendation. As was discussed during the establishment of Texas State Licensure Program, these recommendations exceed the basis for licensure and could present challenges for some labs in the state. Then he says ANSI ASB Standard 017. Again, this is a reasonable standard, and it is a standard. But not all labs in the state currently adhere to this standard. We recommend a 1-year period for labs to adopt the standard statewide. Please let me know if you have any questions. So they haven't gotten to the validation talks one yet, but they will in time for October. So we're going to have a bunch of OSAC conversation in October, I think. There are some DNA ones too that we're going to be talking about.
Okay.
But this is the sort of thing that the group that Peter gathered is coming out with so far. My understanding is the stuff in the pipeline for talks is going to get increasingly contentious as we go along. We'll see.
It would seem that way, yes.
But anyone who wants to get involved in that process, please talk to Peter. It's really important. These documents are important, and I think what we have out so far is not that tough, but it's going to get more complicated, like I said.
Yeah, and it's definitely better to provide feedback at this point than to try to fight it after it becomes a standard. So.
Well, I mean, frankly, this point is like this is the last possible moment. This is like before the Forensic Science Commission says anything about it. The real time to have gotten involved was probably 2 years ago, you know, before this thing made it to the OSAC registry. Because frankly, even on the OSAC registry, now that it's on the OSAC registry, unless our commission were to stand up and say, we disavow that standard for some reason, it's all fair game on cross-examination. And any defense lawyer, I'm going to restrain myself. A defense lawyer with, you know, who understands the forensic science sort of oversight system, or whatever you want to call it nationally, should be looking at these and saying like, okay, Mr. Expert, do you understand this standard and is your lab following it? They're not? Oh, well, why not? Isn't it a national standard? You know, all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's what should be going on. And whether it's happening or not, I think it's probably a separate question. But even, you know, really, if people feel strongly about these OSAC standards, I would say earlier in the process is even better.
Okay.
Comments during the SDO process, for sure.
All right,
That's all
anything else? Anybody have any comments or anything on that update? Okay, so I don't believe Peter is here today, so unless he's sitting there with one of y'all, I don't think we're gonna have an update from TACWIT. Is
Elise,
is that correct?
Elise is here.
Oh, Elise, do you have an update from TACWIT? Yes.
Oh, there she is.
We don't have anything.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And next is schedule and location of future meetings. It's sounding like October from what Lynn keeps saying. So
October 22 would be our meeting, and the 23rd is the quarterly meeting. And we're planning on doing it virtual. At least all of our meetings through the end of the year and going into early next year too. Is anybody not available October 22? Just completely not available that day?
Robert and I are unavailable.
Oh, we're gonna miss you guys.
All right, any public comments? I see there's a few people here listening in that.
Before we get to public comment, can I ask a quick question? I guess I probably should have brought this up under number 11, but there was a couple of questions that I had been involved with people asking for waiver applications for support personnel, and one of which I was wanting to discuss with the group. It was a technician that does like QC work, but my interpretation was I thought that they still may require a license, because even though they may not be doing casework, they're the ones that are, you know, doing performance standards on the instrument, doing any, you know, saying that it's good, not good for the analysts to then follow up with. And so my recommendation was that that person still obtain a license. So I just thought we might want to throw it out there and see if I was overstepping.
I agreed with that too. Aaron, do you want to talk about where we drew the line, like what the distinguishing is?
Well, we're kind of distinguishing. I mean, that one's a little bit different than the other ones. Some of the questions are in regard to somebody that just does a repetitive task, you know, that we've already done the carve out of pipetting. You know, basically that's all they're doing. They're aliquoting. They're not doing anything. But where we've kind of drawn the distinction is if they're doing any, not just interpretation, but if they're making a decision that potentially has downstream effects for other people that are going to be analyzing the material, that they would then also have to be licensed. So it's sort of kind of it's an area of gray. It's not a black and white, but that's kind of where we feel that a good point would be is that if there's any potential that what they're doing is independent and can affect somebody else downstream, then we're requiring or recommending a license.
Yeah, and if they're required to be proficiency tested, but the laboratory still believes they're doing a support role, they can apply for a waiver from us. And that's what I would do to be safe in this scenario that the person that inquired about this proposed, at least for the technician piece of it.
Yeah, but I would agree with y'all's assessment that that sounds like a person who needs to get a license as a technician.
Yeah, the first one, that person doesn't actually have to fall into the proficiency test program because they're not actually touching casework.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt that because it has such a ripple throughout the laboratory and they're doing it on case-like samples, you know, that they're saying, okay, yes, this meets our QC, that that licensing was merited.
Now that makes a lot of sense.
And let me ask
Okay,
you,
go ahead.
how are they going to now have to get proficiency tested? Because that's a component of licensure. The person you said is not required to be proficiency tested.
But
No,
they're,
they just have to be proficiency tested to the extent required by the accrediting body. So if the accrediting body doesn't require proficiency testing, they're
They'll be able to sign the form. All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
okay. Anything else that we have before I go back to the public comment? Okay, if
Yeah, I'm
anybody-
sorry. One more quick question. I've got this question from a couple of people, and I know that the commission has to wait till a number of people get them before they order them, but they're really wanting their cards. Is there any update on when the next order of cards might be coming?
so Leah, Catherine has an embosser at her house. And she is trying to make the cards herself so she can get them out to people. That has been challenging because the machine's not working the way she wants it to work. So yeah, we will get an update to folks about that. Is that your understanding too, Lee?
I haven't talked to her about the imposter.
Catherine says this is the worst machine I have ever encountered. So, but the problem,
And we were thinking, if this is so cost effective, why don't we buy the machine? And we bought it for a couple $100, I think. So maybe now we know why.
which is that it's apparently the instructions are horrible. The thing is horrible. We do need to get those cards out. The problem is we were buying them and, you know, getting them in bulk. And then this particular place that was helping us said that they did not want to do small orders. So that put us in a pickle. And that's why we ended up getting the Catherine's do it yourself at home, creating cards projects, but that has not worked out as well. That's what the delay is. So I know that's not a great excuse. I apologize to those who are desperately waiting their cards.
We may need
and they cards. They have cards. See, this is our fault for ever issuing cards in the first place. We thought it was going to be kind of neat.
Yeah.
There was one person that asked me if this card entitled them to any discounts to anything, and I said no. He said, "Well, what's the point?" I guess we should have gone with that. But yeah, people do want them, so I apologize for the delay. And the state is not going to let us pay $400 for 40 cards. There's just no way, you know. So,
Sure.
So that's the challenge. So I will talk to Catherine offline about what our options are for getting those done. Maybe Rodney would have better luck with it. I don't know. We can try to get it.
Can you get like prisoners to like stamp out like license plates?
You would think so. You would make all sorts of things in TDC. All sorts of things.
There you go.
I guess we could. I think we could already try to figure. I think TDC was actually part of the original process. We had to look in to see if they made those cards, and they didn't do them at the small See, this is such a small program, relatively speaking, so. But we'll get back to it. Maybe Rodney and I can meet in Waco and hand the machine over. That we might have to do that. So we'll see.
Sounds like a plan.
Is
There you
that-
go.
Rodney, will you see if you can't get the thing to work, please?
Yeah, I mean, just give it to me and I'll either break it or make it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Rodney.
Sure.
All right, real quickly though, before I have one more thing I wanted to say before I call for public comment, since we're doing that. I see that Catherine's here, so I'd be remiss not to thank her for, all those hotel reservations, meals, all the reimbursements she's done, all the stuff she's done setting up these conferences, and all of her support as well. So thank you, Catherine. We would not have been successful without all your support. So really appreciate you. And Rodney, you came on later and I neglected to mention you too, but thank you for all your support as well. So yeah, it's a great staff. Texas is very fortunate.
We'll let Catherine know.
And now I will call for public comment.
Everyone should be able to unmute themselves at this point.
I see Dawn is here.
Oh, and
Usually
Catherine's commented in the chat. I think she doesn't have a microphone on her laptop. That's
Oh, that's fine.
Dawn, you have anything? Melissa? We're good. Okay.
Okay. In that case, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Do we have a second? All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
We
Aye.
are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Good to see you all.
Bye.
Bye.